Picture this. You have planned to see a friend who you've not seen for ages. You think you should feel excited, but instead you feel really tense. Your chest is tight and your mind is racing. Your body feels braced rather than joyful. Your thoughts are racing through logistics, perhaps. What will we talk about? How long will it last? What if it's loud or crowded? What if I talk too much or get tired too quickly? You want to go. You care about this person, but the physical sensation feels closer to anxiety than excitement, like you're bracing for impact rather than preparing to feel joy. Then come guilty thoughts, perhaps, like, this is a good thing, so why am I acting so stressed? For many autistic people, positive experiences can trigger the same stress response as negative ones, making it very hard to tell the difference at times between excitement and overwhelm. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Hello and welcome or welcome back to Unwinding Minds. If you're new here, hi, it's very nice to meet you. I'm Rosie. I'm a chronically ill counsellor based in the UK who specialises in supporting disabled, neurodiverse and chronically ill people with managing their mental health. I also make these videos as a bit of a supplement to my private counselling practice, and that is in order to support everyone that I can, including those who cannot currently access counselling with a professional like myself. If that's something that interests you, please consider subscribing to the channel, all of the YouTube stuff. We've got a library of videos here. It's important to state at the outset that these videos are not a substitute for counselling. They're only intended to support with psychoeducation. With all of that said, today we're talking about an experience that many autistic people share that can be very hard to explain to those who don't feel this way. That even positive, enjoyable, or meaningful things can feel draining or even fill you with absolute dread, sometimes leading them to be just as draining as negative, stressful experiences. We'll cover what stress is in general, how autistic people often experience stress differently, why it can be hard to tell whether something is positive or negative in the moment, how counselling could help, and what the science says about this experience, because it is really interesting. So first of all, what the heck is stress anyway? When most people hear the word stress, they think of exams, deadlines, or conflict, things that feel bad. But in psychology, stress isn't just bad things. It's the body and brain's response to demand or challenge. It might help with understanding stress a little more if we introduce two different words to describe it, which are eustress and dysstress. It might help with understanding stress a little more if we introduce two different words to describe it, which are eustress and dysstress. You've probably heard of distress, but perhaps not eustress. So let's define those two terms together. Negative stress, or distress, is overwhelming, it's exhausting, it's anxiety producing. Positive stress, or eustress, is the kind you get from a challenge that you want, like learning something new or doing something exciting. For many people, eustress feels energizing, motivating, and maybe even thrilling. It's that thrill before the performance, or the focus you get when swimming in your favorite hobby. But, and this is crucial, stress itself is a physiological response, not a signal of good or bad. Your nervous system reacts the same way to intense excitement as it does to intense worry in many ways. So when you experience stress, your nervous system shifts into a bit more of a survival mode. The sympathetic branch activates the fight or flight response, and that releases all sorts of hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, etc. In the short term, that increases your heart rate, it sharpens your focus, it tenses your muscles, it redirects energy towards immediate action, all of which is very helpful if there's a tiger in front of you licking its lips. But when this response is triggered repeatedly, or it doesn't fully switch off, the body does struggle to return back to its baseline. And over time, chronic activation of the sympathetic branch of the nervous system can disrupt sleep, digestion, even immune function. It can increase inflammation in your body, and there's lots of science to point to this, and it can contribute to anxiety, burnout, and exhaustion. The nervous system is designed for cycles of activation and recovery. without adequate recovery, even manageable, so-called manageable stress, can become physically and emotionally costly. So with the understanding in hand of what stress is and what it can do to the body, let's look together at what the science says about adults with autism and stress. Scientific studies show autistic adults have a tendency to report higher levels of perceived stress than non-autistic controls, and that this is linked to lower overall quality of life and well-being. Another study found that autistic adults who engage more in coping, meaning active engagement versus avoidance, tend to handle stress better overall, but stress itself still predicts lower well-being. Importantly, research also suggests that autistic people may have increased emotional stress reactivity, meaning that daily activities, even ordinary stuff, connect more strongly with negative feelings in real time. So all of that combines together to really alter both the perception of stress and the frequency with which it is felt. What's important here is this: the experience of stress, whether something is good or positive or negative, can be perceived intensely and with less distinction than in people without autism. This matches many first-person accounts I've heard in counselling sessions, where a happy event can still feel, horrible, overwhelming, exhausting. You're not imagining it, and the stress may be felt very differently to autistic or neurotypical people. It leads us into the double empathy problem, really, where autistic people and holistic people often really struggle to understand each other's experiences and needs. I mean, if you want a video about the double empathy problem, put it down in the comments because I'm happy to put that together. But back to feeling stressed, even in circumstances where, ideally you'd like to be happy. And I'm sure we'd all like to understand this more, and there are several reasons I can think of that might help to explain it a little bit further. One is sensory processing and intensity. Autistic people often process sensory and emotional input with more intensity. This means that sounds, lights, emotions, even good ones, can register stronger. It can feel like having the volume turned up on everything. There are physiological differences in the neurodiverse brain. I'm going to talk neuroscience for just a moment, though I am by means no expert. So research suggests that autistic brains often show differences in synaptic development and connectivity compared to holistic brains. Synapses, which are the connections between neurons, as you probably remember from science class, may be more densely packed in certain regions in the brain due to differences in synaptic pruning during development, which can affect how information is filtered and prioritized. Essentially, there are more connections in an autistic person's brain than in a neurotypical counterpart, which is very important to remember with stress. There's also evidence that the brain systems that turn up signals and the systems that turn down signals aren't always balanced in the same way in the brain. And in simple terms, the volume control in your brain just may not regulate input smoothly. So sounds, lights, emotions, all of those things that I said before can feel louder or stronger or harder to filter out. And when we think about all of that, how that influences sensory information and how it's processed, well, it makes sense that there's heightened sensitivity, difficulty filtering out background stimuli, or, feeling easily overwhelmed by the input that others barely even notice. So it's not a wonder then that having a cup of coffee in a crowded cafe may affect your friend very differently than how it might affect you. Your brains are literally programmed to respond differently. The second thing I want to discuss is emotional regulation differences. Many autistic people report challenges with labeling, expressing, and also regulating their emotions. This is sometimes called emotional disconcordance, where the internal feelings don't align with the external expression, and it can make emotional experiences feel very confusing or overwhelming. Many autistic people also experience alexithymia, which I've talked about before, which literally means no words for emotions. It doesn't mean that someone doesn't have feelings. It means that they may find it harder to identify, describe, or distinguish between the emotions in the moment. For example, physical sensations like a racing heart or a tight chest might register clearly, but whether that feeling is excitement, anxiety, anger, or overwhelm can be harder to interpret. This can make emotional regulation way more challenging because it's difficult to soothe or respond to a feeling when you're not fully sure what it is yet. Thirdly, let's talk about baseline stress. Because autistic individuals often face sensory challenges, social expectations, and the effort of navigating a world built for people who are not autistic, the baseline stress can be higher, which makes any additional stressor, even a good one, feel like too much. Add to that social conditioning and masking, which make autistic people less likely to reach our coping strategies in the first place, and we can see what contribution that can have to overall stress levels. In non-autistic psychology literature, people can usually tell eustress from distress for the following reasons. Eustress feels energizing, right? It's exciting. But distress feels overwhelming. But many autistic people report that eustress can feel just as intense as distress, not necessarily in a good way. The physical cues, heart racing, sweating, tension, are the same in both responses. So the meaning, is this good or bad, becomes much harder to interpret. That's not just anecdotal. Studies show autistic adults have a stronger emotional reaction to everyday events compared to their controls, as I said before. Whether those events are inherently positive or negative, it doesn't matter. This means that the same physiological stress response, whether from excitement or from anxiety, can be hard to label emotionally. So, while someone without autism might think, this event is exciting, someone with autism might just feel in their body what is happening. Shaky, overwhelmed, intense, unclear. So we've reached the point where I talk about why any of this is important or relevant to you. Understanding this can help us with offering self-compassion, with communicating to others what our needs are and which of them are being met or not met. You can explain to others that your brain doesn't always separate good from stressful in the way that they might expect. And finally, understanding this is the gateway to managing your stress differently. Knowing what is happening in your body and brain can help you to go more gently on yourself and understand your own signals of stress and why they might look a bit different. Recognizing the signals early helps you to pace yourself rather than crash and burn after something that, you started to do because it looked positive. If what we've discussed today reflects your experience, counselling can be incredibly helpful. Not because there's something wrong with you, obviously, but because it gives you the space to understand how your nervous system works, how you're responding to things. A good therapist can help you untangle excitement from anxiety, notice your early stress signals, and build tools for pacing yourself before overwhelm hits. Counselling can also reduce the shame that often comes with thinking you should feel happy, but you don't. Over time, that awareness makes it easier to plan around your energy, communicate your needs to others, and experience positive events in a way that feels safer and more manageable, rather than confusing, overwhelming, or draining. Despite the challenges we've looked at, autistic people often experience intense and deeply rich moments of joy. I have never seen someone happier than an autistic person talking about or experiencing their passions, special interests, and joys in life. When something truly resonates and really hits you in that place, whether it's a special interest, creative project, connection with somebody who understands them, the pleasure can be immersive, all-encompassing, and really that intense feeling of joy. It can be vivid and meaningful and unforgettable, even if it is sometimes mixed in with overstimulation or overwhelm. So the very thing that can be overwhelming at times is also a gateway to real, deep joy. Autistic people have a remarkable capacity to notice patterns, details, and beauty that others might miss. And this attention can make moments of happiness feel profoundly rewarding and uniquely their own. If you've made it this far, please know that I'm very grateful to you. If this episode has resonated with you, please take a second to like it if you can, to subscribe, or to share it with someone who might benefit from this message. You never know, you might make a difference in their life too. We make a lot of videos on this channel about chronic illness, disability, neurodivergence, and mental health. So I'm always very interested to see what it is that people would like to see more of. If you've got thoughts, pop them down in the comments section below. And do check the description if you are interested in working with me on a one-to-one basis, as I do offer private counselling. Thank you so much for watching, and take really good care.